Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive into modern Indian history? Today's episode is especially for our UPSC aspirants gearing up for GS1 and anyone, really, who finds India's fight for independence fascinating.
Right, picking up where we left off in our exploration.
This time, we're tackling a truly unique chapter, the Ghadar Party.
Ah, the Ghadar Party. What makes them so intriguing is that they weren't actually on Indian soil, you see.
So, not your typical freedom fighters.
Not at all. These were Indian immigrants.
Immigrants?
Yeah, headquartered all the way over in San Francisco, and they were all about revolution.
Okay, so we've got revolutionaries thousands of miles away plotting to overthrow British rule. That's already a story right there.
Oh, it gets even better. They were connecting with global movements, all sorts of revolutionaries around the world.
Wow, a truly global movement then. But before we get into all the daring plans and intrigue, let's paint a picture of the world they were living in. What was happening at the time that led to the birth of the Ghadar Party?
Well, imagine, it's the early 20th century.
Okay, early 1900s.
Nationalist feelings are bubbling up, not just inside India itself,
Makes sense.
but also among Indians who had emigrated abroad.
Right, because many Indians had already traveled far and wide by this point.
Exactly. And there were these incredible thinkers like Tariq Nath Das and Lala Hardayal.
I've heard those names. Weren't they quite influential?
Extremely. They really knew how to mobilize these overseas Indian communities, especially the students. They were fired up.
Students, always at the forefront of change.
They instilled this deep sense of national identity and fueled the desire for freedom, you know?
So they were planting the seeds of revolution across continents.
A perfect way to put it. And these seeds, well, they started taking root in places you might not expect.
Like where?
Vancouver.
Canada.
Yep. And Seattle, too. That's where you saw these early centers of activism popping up.
So what, like meeting places?
Exactly. Places with names like the Swadesh Savak Home.
Swadesh Savak Home.
Okay.
Right.
Or the United India House.
Sounds very official.
They were gathering spots where the talk of revolution could really start to spread.
So these were the precursors to the Ghadar Party, the foundation.
Precisely. And all that groundwork led to a more organized movement taking shape.
And that moment happened when?
Officially, July 15th, 1913.
July 15th, a pivotal date.
The Ghadar Party, as we know it, was formed right there in San Francisco.
San Francisco. All comes back to San Francisco. So a date etched in history. And of course, it takes passionate people to drive a movement like this. Who were some of these individuals at the heart of the Ghadar Party?
Well, you had some real firebrands. Lala Hardayal, for one.
Okay, Lala Hardayal.
Then you had Sant Baba Wasaka Singh Dadahar.
Sant Baba Wasaka Singh Dadahar.
And we can't forget Baba Jawala Singh.
There's so many important figures.
Oh, and Santak Singh, Sohan. The list goes on. They and so many others were the driving force behind the Ghadar Party's vision.
And their strategies. But, one thing that immediately strikes me about the Ghadar Party is its diversity.
Absolutely. The Ghadar Party was a real melting pot. It brought together people from all walks of life, different religions, backgrounds.
You had Sikhs, Hindus, Muslims.
All united.
All under this shared goal of freeing India.
It really is a testament to their commitment, isn't it?
It is, to put those differences aside for the greater good.
That they did.
Though, the Ghadar Party did have particularly strong Punjabi roots, didn't it?
It did. Many of the leaders, many of the members, they were Punjabi immigrants, particularly those who had settled in California.
Right, because California was a hub for Punjabi immigrants at the time.
Exactly.
Seeking better opportunities, but never forgetting where they came from. And speaking of location, San Francisco as their headquarters, that was no accident, was it?
Oh, it was strategic. Very much so.
Why San Francisco?
Well, think about it. A major port city.
A gateway to the world.
It allowed the Ghadar Party to connect with other Indian communities worldwide.
Wow, so their network extended far and wide.
They could gather information, spread their revolutionary message. It was crucial.
So they were perched at a global crossroads, ready to spark a revolution. And their message was clear, wasn't it? Armed struggle. That was the path to freedom.
Absolutely. No messing around with these guys.
They truly believed that decisive action was needed to break free from British rule.
They weren't afraid to get their hands dirty.
We're talking about assassinations, spreading anti-imperialist literature.
Even trying to connect with Indian troops stationed abroad. Can you imagine?
Bold moves. Their dedication was unwavering. But how did they actually plan to turn those bold ideas into action? Let's get specific.
Yeah.
Tell us about their revolutionary strategies.
Right. Well, one of their key plans was this thing called the Ghadar program.
The Ghadar program. Okay, lay it on us.
It was their grand plan, really, a multifaceted approach to dismantling British control.
Ambitious.
Oh, definitely. We're talking inciting uprising.
Uprisings.
Yeah, in multiple British colonies, not just India.
So their vision extended far beyond just their homeland.
Oh, absolutely. They saw this fight as part of a much larger struggle
Global.
against colonialism everywhere.
That's a powerful message.
And they were masters of propaganda.
Propaganda. In what way?
They knew how to reach people.
Give us an example.
Imagine you're a Punjabi laborer.
Anything like
I'm a laborer working on a farm, maybe a mill, far from home.
tough life.
And suddenly, someone approaches you talking about freedom, about revolution.
Someone who understands my struggles.
Exactly. Planting those seeds of hope.
Yeah, I can see how that would be effective.
They understood the power of connecting with people directly.
On a personal level.
Absolutely. But they also knew the written word was a powerful tool.
So we're talking about their newspaper.
The Ghadar.
The Ghadar. That's a strong name.
Oh, it was more than just a newspaper.
A weapon.
Absolutely. It was instrumental in shaping public opinion.
What kind of content were they putting out there?
Exposing British atrocities.
Shining a light on the darkness.
Highlighting the struggles of everyday Indians.
Giving a voice to the voiceless.
They even serialized Vinayak Damodar Savarkar's book, The Indian War of Independence, 1857.
That's Savarkar's account of the 1857 uprising. Wow, they weren't pulling any punches.
They were masters of communication, using every tool they could get their hands on.
And it wasn't just the newspaper, was it? Tell us about their international connections.
Well, they had a network.
A global one.
They connected with revolutionaries from all corners of the globe.
Big names.
Oh, yeah. People like Lokmanya Tilak.
The one and only Tilak.
Sir Aurobindo.
Another giant of the movement.
V.D. Savarkar himself.
The man whose book they were serializing.
Madame Kama.
A true revolutionary.
Shamji Krishna Varma, Ajit Singh, Sufiyamba Prasad. I mean, the list goes on.
This was a truly global tapestry of resistance.
It was more than just political and intellectual connections, though.
What else?
They tapped into the power of art.
Art.
They had these poems.
Revolutionary poems.
Ghadar de Gunj became like anthems for the movement.
Ghadar de Gunj. I love that. Spreading the message through music and verse.
Exactly. And then during World War I,
World War I, things were already chaotic enough.
they pulled off one of their boldest moves.
Oh, what did they do?
They reached out to the Central Powers
Germany?
and the Ottoman Empire.
Essentially Britain's enemies. Now, that's a risky move.
They were desperate, you have to understand.
To see India free.
They were willing to take extraordinary risks.
The dangerous game they were playing. Betting on the enemy of their enemy. And then there's the Komagata Maru incident in 1914. That must have had a huge impact on the Ghadar Party.
Oh, the Kamagata Maru, that was a turning point.
Refresh our memories. What was the Komagata Maru incident?
So you had this ship, the Kamagata Maru, full of Indian immigrants, hoping to start a new life in Canada.
Okay, full of hope.
But they were turned away.
Unjustly.
Totally.
Yeah.
And it exposed the hypocrisy of the British Empire.
I can only imagine the outrage.
It fueled the fire for the Ghadar Party.
People were angry.
And ready to take action.
A stark reminder that events happening far from India could still ripple through the movement for independence.
Definitely.
But, as we know, the Ghadar Party's dream of a quick, clean revolution, well, it didn't quite go as planned.
No, it didn't.
And they had some major obstacles to face.
Some very real challenges, despite their passion and connections. One of the biggest blows for the Ghadar Party was the arrest of their leaders.
Oh, wow. So they were being detained before they could even get to India to start the revolution.
A lot of them, yeah. Arrested before they could even set foot on Indian soil. It really threw a wrench in their plans.
I bet. Took out their leadership. Disrupted everything they were trying to build.
It crippled their organization, that's for sure.
Makes sense.
Mm.
And wasn't there also some pushback from within Punjab itself?
You'd think with such strong Punjabi roots, they'd have a ton of support back home, right?
You'd assume so, yeah.
But it was complicated.
How so?
Well, for one, they faced opposition from some native Punjabis.
Really? Punjabis against the movement.
Yeah.
Why?
Some were just wary of their whole revolutionary approach. It was a bit too radical for them.
I see.
And of course, the British authorities in Punjab, they were cracking down hard, saw the Ghadar Party as a direct threat, obviously.
Obviously. But what about the Sikhs? Weren't a lot of the Ghadar leaders Sikh?
They were. But here's a fascinating twist. Some Sikhs actually considered those Ghadar leaders apostates
Apostates, wow, because they were challenging the British.
because of the whole Sikh loyalty to the British Army thing. That was a long-standing tradition.
Right, I'd forgotten about that historical context.
Yeah.
Talk about a complex political landscape.
Oh, it's a tangled web. You have revolutionaries fighting for freedom, but also trying to navigate all these pre-existing loyalties and allegiances within their own communities.
Really highlights how hard it is to unite people under a single cause, even when they're facing a common oppressor.
For sure. And with all that going on, plus their leaders scattered, imprisoned,
Yeah, how do you maintain any kind of unified front?
you don't, at least not effectively. It created this leadership vacuum, which was almost impossible to fill.
Tough to make decisions, adapt to new challenges.
They were constantly playing catch-up.
You know, it makes you wonder, do you think they underestimated what they were taking on?
In some ways, maybe. I mean, their passion was undeniable.
Absolutely. They were driven.
But a revolution on this scale, it takes more than just passion,
So they might have overestimated their capabilities.
possibly, and the level of support they'd actually receive.
Right, because on paper, their ideas were powerful.
Their ideology was strong. That whole militant nationalism, the emphasis on secularism, that resonated with a lot of people.
But putting it into practice,
That's where the gaps were.
what were they lacking?
Organization, financing, strategic planning. They were big on ideology, but the practical side of things, that was where they fell short.
So visionaries, but not necessarily the best tacticians.
It's a common problem with revolutionary movements. Hard to balance the big ideas with the nitty-gritty of actually making it happen.
And of course, we can't forget about the British. They weren't just going to sit back and let all this unfold.
Oh no, the British reaction was swift and brutal.
Especially in Punjab, right?
Especially there. Lieutenant General Michael O'Dwyer was in charge, and he was not messing around.
Oh, he do.
He went full crackdown mode.
Give us the details.
Widespread detention.
Just rounding people up.
Sometimes without any real evidence. Censorship, shutting down their publications. And dissent. Forget about it. You even whispered a word against the British, you were in trouble.
A campaign of fear, basically,
Yeah.
designed to crush the movement before it could really gain steam.
Exactly, and sadly, it worked.
So despite their fiery passion, their global network, the Ghadar Party's dream,
It faltered.
but their story isn't just a simple failure, is it?
Not at all. We have to remember that even in their setbacks, they made a real impact on India's journey to independence.
Because sometimes, even movements that don't achieve their immediate goals, they plant the seeds for future change. So how did the Ghadar Party contribute to that larger struggle?
For one, they inspired people in India and abroad, showed the world that the desire for freedom, it went way beyond borders.
A truly global yearning.
And they did more than just inspire. They raised awareness about what was happening in India.
The atrocities, the injustices,
Exactly. They brought international attention to the plight of Indians under British rule.
shining a light on the darkness.
Helped foster a much stronger sense of anti-colonial consciousness among the people.
Their efforts weren't in vain. They shifted public opinion domestically and internationally.
Contributed to the growing momentum for India's independence, even if they didn't get to see it themselves.
And their ability to forge those international connections, not to be underestimated.
They built alliances with revolutionaries all over the world.
Showing that the struggle against colonialism was a shared fight.
You're right. They understood that freedom was a universal aspiration, and that by joining forces, they could amplify their message, have a greater impact.
And their ideology, even if it didn't always translate into perfect strategies, it left a mark.
A lasting one, I'd say. That emphasis on militant nationalism, on secularism, those ideas found their way into India's nationalist discourse,
They helped shape the vision of a free India.
even if they couldn't bring it about themselves.
It's also telling, isn't it, that the British reacted so harshly to them.
Oh, definitely. It shows how much of a threat they were perceived to be.
The British saw them as dangerous, capable of disrupting the entire system.
That crackdown itself is a form of validation in a way,
They recognized the power, the potential of the Ghadar movement.
even if they tried to crush it.
It's a reminder that even when the odds seem insurmountable, resistance has value.
It plants seeds, inspires others, and sometimes it chips away at the foundations of these oppressive systems.
Little by little.
Sometimes that's all it takes to set those wheels of change in motion.
So, as we wrap up our deep dive into the Ghadar Party, any final thoughts for our listeners? What are the key takeaways here?
Well, I think the big thing to remember is that the Ghadar Party, They weren't just some footnote in history.
Right.
They were pioneers, visionaries.
They dared to imagine a free India when it seemed like an impossible dream.
And they were willing to fight for it from across the globe, taking on the mighty British Empire.
Such incredible courage and determination.
They may not have achieved that swift victory they were hoping for.
No, but their impact was undeniable.
They shifted public opinion
Helped inspire future generations of freedom fighters.
and showed the world that the fight against colonialism, it was a global struggle.
Their story is one of resilience, for sure.
Yeah.
Fighting for what they believed in, no matter the odds.
And it does make you wonder, what if?
What if?
What if they had succeeded in launching that full-scale revolution?
What if they'd had more support back in Punjab?
How would things have played out differently?
It is those what-ifs that really make history come alive.
They make you think.
And even though they didn't achieve their ultimate goal the way they'd envisioned it,
Their impact on India's journey to independence, massive.
they helped lay the groundwork for what was to come.
They were part of something much bigger than themselves.
A testament to the power of ideas and how even movements that might seem unsuccessful on the surface,
They can still spark change.
they can have a ripple effect that lasts for generations.
Absolutely.
And in the case of the Ghadar Party, they planted the seeds for a free India.
Even if they didn't get to see it blossom themselves.
So, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the Ghadar Party.
Fascinating stuff.
I hope you all found it insightful.
It's important to remember that history isn't just about dates and names.
It's about the stories of people.
The ideas that shaped the world we live in.
So keep questioning, keep exploring,
Keep the spirit of the Ghadar Party alive.
learn from the past. Let it inform our present and future.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
If you have any thoughts on the Ghadar Party, questions burning in your mind,
Share them with us on social media.
we'd love to hear from you. And if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into history.
We'll keep bringing you those fascinating stories from the past.
Until next time, keep learning, keep exploring.
And keep those what-ifs coming.